Arrogance, you also talk about just learning about 401ks and some financial literacy awareness that is seemingly newer to you. So, in this 30 plus years, obviously without getting into too specific details, I mean, what did you do with your money? Why didn't you look into investing? What was happening to where this is a newer thing, this idea of the 401k or the investing or the putting away for retirement?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think for many people in my community, we weren't talking about those things. And, I'm 55. So for me, I'm definitely looking at retirement. I'm definitely looking at, okay, what is my next thing that I will do to ensure that my children, my wife, the group members are all safe and doing well. That's just something that I think comes with age in my community. And it's unfortunate because, what they consider financial literacy to some extent or another wasn't even afforded to us as a people for many generations. Um, Slavery again was 160 years ago, roundabout. So, um, someone just said recently, and I agree, Rosa Parks was alive at the exact same time that Harriet Tubman was alive. And so I think people would not think that because they think of Harriet Tubman as way back in the day and they think of Rosa Parks in the 60s. But the truth is, they were alive at the exact same time. They weren't born the same time, but they were alive during the same time period. My point is, that's how recent slavery was. Well, I mention that because as a community, as a Black community, we weren't allowed to participate in the financial literacy piece. We weren't allowed to invest. We weren't allowed to make money from the generations and hundreds of years of work that we put in. So it's a relatively new conversation for us. And that's what I'm expressing on this song, Arrogance.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's all very powerful. And then Ohini Savan as well talks about uh, being born free but dying in debt, which I think tied in well to your 401k comment because the reality is, and I thought about this 20 years ago or something. I just remember thinking, like, man, if I did nothing today and I prorated all my expenses, it would still cost me whatever the number was at the time, X, to just wake up and go to sleep
Yeah.
doing nothing of
Yeah.
spend no expenditures. It would have cost me whatever that number was that day.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's insane.
It's insane. And I
uh,
mean, yeah, it's to me, I see the wealth gap widening and widening more and more as the generations continue. And I hope the newer generations, like the young millennials and the Gen Zers and stuff, will change this dynamic as we all continue on. But right now, I mean, the wealth gap is just widening, and many people, white, black, or any other race and ethnicity, are finding it harder and harder to just exist, especially with any comfort or security for their future. So, yeah, we really have some things to analyze and change in America.
I'd say that's an understatement. The system on the one hand is broken and isn't working. On the other hand, it's working perfectly. So
That's exactly right. It's doing exactly what it was intended to do in some ways.
in many, many ways.
Yeah.
So with Hello on Bullets in the Chamber, you mentioned about this being the third installment. So what how does Bullets in the Chamber be part of this trifecta and what does it mean for you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this might be our last record, and if it is, I'm cool with that. It's, you know, Config and I got together during the pandemic. We released Don't Fight Your Demons in 2020, meaning Arrested Development, uh, Don't Fight Your Demons, which Configa and I co-executive produced together, right? And it was the start of a new a new sort of refreshing time for Arrested Development. A lot of fans were surprised by the boom bap energy that the record had. And then they were sort of like, I'm going to revisit Arrested Development. And then others, of course, always have stayed with us through all the projects we've released since the early 90s. So Config and I decided to do For the F and Love next. That was, I think, 2022, 2021. And it did even better than Don't Fight Your Demons. And so then we took our time with Bullets in the Chamber. We were both going through a ton of things. I actually was in the hospital a lot last year. Um, Configure had things he was dealing with his family. And so, everything just sort of took its time. And then we finally cooked up, Bullets in the Chamber. To me, it was like, I didn't want to leave it at two projects. It just didn't feel right. Like the number three is the magic number, as De La said. So, I felt like, okay, well, let's do at least one more project. It's been successful. People have really been digging it. Let's give them something else. And that's exactly what we did. And, a lot of fans are saying this is their favorite of the three. Some, of course, think the other two or one of the other two are better, but it doesn't matter to us. To us, it's like as long as we were able to put out a record that people care about and thought was at least competitive or at the most the best that we've ever done, that was what we were out to accomplish. And I feel like we accomplished that. And we're very, very proud of this record. It may be the very last Arrested Development record. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, a lot of people are laughing at me whenever I say that because I've said that for the last two records. So we'll see what actually happens.
But I also think, and you talk about this on Bullets in the Chamber, of being in a lot of ways at your creative apex and like being so creative now. So
Yeah.
why walk away if forget the fans and forget the consumer, forget the people, why would you, if you feel that way, why would you step away?
Yeah, for me personally, I'm I'm disappointed in a few things. One is the platforms that exist for legacy artists to promote their new music, not their old music. There's platforms that are pushing 90s hip hop, 80s hip hop, golden age hip hop, but there's not a ton of platforms that are pushing the new hip hop from those artists. That's number one. Number two, the the mainstream public is not even aware of, like, the mainstream public that loves hip hop today is not aware by and large of the hip hop of the past. And that's frustrating because you have now probably 2 to 3 generations of humans that feel hip hop is something totally different than what it started as and what it was from 1970s to 2000s. Like they're not even aware of it. And so they're sort of they're not literate of hip hop, and that's a little weird, and it's tough to put music out consistently into that. At least it is tough for me to put that out over and over to that particular landscape out there. Like, so we make our music for those that are over 35, 40, or anybody who's young enough that cares about the kind of hip hop that we're doing. We want them to love it. And we have a lot of those fans that come to shows, but it's not enough. Like to us, it's like, well, or to me, it's like, well, do I want to keep doing this? And meanwhile, the mainstream landscape is feeling like the Vultures album is just mind blowing. And that's not a diss to the Vultures album. I didn't think it was a mind blowing record. So I felt like, okay, it's got moments. I like some of the melodies. I think it's all right, but I also don't think that it's mind blowing. I mean, for me personally, the same difference with the Metro Boomin record. So I'm like, okay, well, the landscape is changing so much that I don't even know if I want to make music in that particular, and that if that's the sea that I'm going to be throwing my line into. I don't know if I want to do that too much more. Um, yeah, I'm just not sure if I feel like that's a smart move for me. And then lastly, I think the way records are promoted and the way what it takes to get people to really get excited about a record also does not appeal to me. I feel it's less about the music and about the originality and about the artistic um, input that's put into the project, and it's more about a catchy headline, or clickbait or some type of. crazy situation that happened outside of the music that makes the music relevant, and I'm not big on that. Like it's not what moves me as an artist. And I feel like there is a time, and I talked about this on Don't Fight Your Demons album on a song called We'll See. Well, I said there is a time that I want to gracefully pull out because I didn't want to be like James Brown, who we toured with him when he was getting older. He was in his 70s, I believe. And, he might even have been I forget what age he was when he passed, but he was at a certain age where I said, man, in my opinion, he shouldn't be touring anymore. Not because he's not amazing and a legacy absolute icon, but because I just thought he was too old to be doing this. And I didn't want to be in his shoes. So I felt like there's a time when any artist, in my opinion, should sort of start thinking about, well, what are they going to do? Are they going to still stay at it or just let this new generation do whatever they're doing? And, if you're asked to come back onto the scene, like a Carlos Santana where he did that project with all of the younger artists like a Lauryn Hill and Cee-Lo, and then fine. If that's the call of the moment, then do that. But if not, maybe there's a time to just sort of, you're doing something else. And for me, it's not a sad story. I actually have things that I really am passionate about that have nothing to do with releasing records. I'll always make music. I'll always do stuff in some form or fashion musically, but I probably wouldn't release it commercially at a certain point. And I want to do those other things that I'm passionate about. I'm totally fine with that narrative for my life.
And what are those things?
I love gardening. Um, I love outdoor farming and these kind of things I'm passionate about, but I don't do often because of my touring schedule and Arrested Development's recording and release schedules and the things that I do right now. But if I wasn't doing those things, oh, I would be all over that like all the time. And then I'm a family guy too, so I love spending time with my family. I would love for my kids to have grandkids. So like these things move me in a high priority way. Like these are things that mean more to me than any other projects we put out. So that would also be amazing for me.